what's out there in the hayfold, base measures, the daily base. That's good.
So, is this simply a question of Ba'ala?
We will talk about that. Right. Okay, good morning. Shalom Aleichem to everybody. It's been a couple weeks since the onset of Pesach. Oh, Baruch Hashem. And I want to do a topic. We're in the period of Sefiras Haomer, so I figured I'd give a share about involving Sefiras Haomer. And I found when you put a face, or in this case, an entire town as part of the topic, it adds flavor. People get excited. So we entitled today's share Sefiras Haomer in Lakewood. Now, people all of a sudden asking, do they do Sefiras Haomer in Lakewood different than everywhere else? Tune in. The answer is going to be yes. And in multiple facets. Now, Sefiras Haomer itself, just to go through the basics of the mitzvah, right? Seemingly is a very simple mitzvah. Yeah, the joke is, do you say Bi Omer or Li Omer? Like, what else is the difference? Do you say Nosach Ashkenaz goes straight and starts counting? Nosach Sfard, you say the Shem Yichud. Right away, well, I'll get to that. But for the most part, the performance, it's seemingly a very easy mitzvah to do in theory. Every night, you just count the number, 1 to 49. Got to pick the right number, days and weeks. Okay, we'll talk about mistakes that could happen with that. But, you know, the trick is remembering. But once you get past the remembering, Rabbi, it sounds like a very simple mitzvah. So where's there room for variation? Where's there room for differences? That's what I want to talk about today. Sefiras Haomer in Lakewood, I hope, will paint a interesting picture of the mitzvah itself and also give a little flavor. Lakewood here doesn't just mean the city, it really means the yeshiva that made the city. Now, oh, yeah. They're taking over Georgian Court College, if you know of it. Yes. Now, really, this year today, I have to give credit to two definitely not so well-known Svarim. Maybe the Gabbaim know a little bit. Someone published about a decade ago a little kuntris, relatively small. They call themselves a kuntris, not a full sefer. Nog b'chachma. This kuntris goes through, it's a Gabbai's dream, every little step of what is done for the davening of the yeshiva of Lakewood. There's all the minhagim of the yeshiva, kimat every step. And it brings, you know, and it discusses some of them, I wouldn't say great depth, but talks on them. And you know, as someone who served as a gabbai myself in yeshiva, in my version, I haven't read where other yeshivas differ in how they do things, and it's a very tremendous resource to know how to run a minyan. It's very nice if you're a gabbai, you're a shul rav, to try to keep the minhagim well of the shul, what goes on. Sometimes you can find yourself in a shul, the rav isn't there for a Shabbos, and the gabbai is not sure, and like, okay, what do we do today? I'll give you an example. We're going to get to this later. Did you say Avar Rachamim yesterday, before Ashrei, before you put back the Sefer Torah? Even though you recited moments before that, Berchas HaChodesh. Normally you don't say Avar Rachamim when you say Berchas HaChodesh. Is it different because it's during the period of Sefiras Haomer, where tragedy befell the Jewish nation? That's a perfect question. Somebody in Shul has to know the answer to that question.
I asked myself that question yesterday.
Good.
At Sherry.
Yeah.
Where they did say it. I wondered whether it was appropriate.
So that is one. That is a fantastic question, and we're going to talk about that.
And that's an easy one.
And his son. So it would seem to me that you wouldn't say it.
Fantastic,
As a former God.
fantastic point. Good argument.
That's just
We'll get there.
relatively easy to compare to some other things.
Correct. I also have to give credit for an even less well-known sefer. They published a Kovetz, a Torah journal, of random a lot of modern day people. But within it, they have 2 pages worth of recollections from within the Cutler family of what Rav Aaron Cutler, what his son Rav Shneir Cutler did in themselves, but also within the running of the Lakewood Yeshiva. And a lot of them match up well with what I found in other countries too. But very, very interesting. Just to make sure everyone's clear, what is Lakewood? So if you haven't figured out, Lakewood has emerged in America, has probably one of the, used to be New York is the epicenter, probably still is to a certain degree, but
It's the fastest growing city in New Jersey.
it's for sure, yes. Lakewood has been growing in leaps and bounds.
It's the second largest yeshiva in the world.
Some say the largest. They fight for recognition who's the largest. But Lakewood for sure is the biggest, we'll call it Makom Torah, base medrash in the world, for sure in America, where they have close to 10,000 students currently in the yeshiva, right? That's the size,
It's the wealthiest city. It has the most millionaires.
Okay, that stat may not be 100% accurate.
Really?
It was,
That's not true at all.
right. Basically, the Lakewood Yeshiva, which, if you go back to the 1950s, barely had a couple hundred students. It was not the biggest yeshiva in America at the time when Reb Aaron Cutler was nifter. Aaron Cutler was the called the founder of the yeshiva. Really, yeshiva originally was in White Plains, but he moved it to Lakewood, which at that time was a resort town in Jersey. There, I guess those who couldn't afford Atlantic City, you go to Lakewood, want a little more quiet.
My grandfather called it Atlantic City.
Yeah. So Rav Aaron Cutler, who was one of the leaders of Torah Judaism during the war, post the war, he was the Rosh Yeshiva, we'll call it the founder of the Lakewood Yeshiva. After his death, his son Rav Shneir Cutler took over. Unfortunately, Rav Shneir Cutler was nifter relatively young. I forgot exactly how old he was when he was nifter. But
He got lung cancer, but he never smoked a day in his life. That's when they banned out smoking in the yeshiva.
well, good stat. But Rav Shneir Cutler took over after his father, but was nifter relatively young. And the current 4 Rosh Yeshivas of Lakewood, including Rav Shneir's son, Rav Malkiel Cutler, they took over at a relatively young age. Also, that's part of the reason why it went from 1 to 1 to 4. It's a tough burden for one person to handle, and especially now where the yeshiva has grown to astronomical numbers. You can imagine, we'll talk about this, how many weddings and events, their yeshivas have to cover. And this is a lot, it's a big burden. Very, very big burden. I mean, just the financial burden of the yeshiva is astronomical. And Baruch Hashem. So you have these generations of the Cutler family, and we'll talk about eidos that people have, what was done in the yeshiva, what was done in the family. And from that, we'll get a picture in general of Sefiras Haomer, but more particularly, we'll talk about Lakewood. Now, first question. First issue, I'll go straight to a unique issue in Lakewood. When do you count Sefiras Haomer? When? They'll tell me, Rabbi, from the second day of Pesach to Shavuos. No. I mean, each individual night, at what time are you counting? What time?
Nightfall.
Let's play nightfall,
Describe it.
right?
Yeah.
Now, many people probably, around this neighborhood, a lot of people go to Mincha Ma'ariv. So that means they're davening Ma'ariv probably a few minutes, depending what they do in between Mincha Ma'ariv, if they do anything in between Mincha Ma'ariv. But for the most part, it's pretty quickly after Shkia you're davening Ma'ariv. Now, we'll talk about, there's issues on a daily basis, perhaps with Kriya Shema, but this time of year, there's also an issue with Sefiras Haomer. Does one count there? So, not to get too complicated, but the Mishnah Berurah does recommend an idea of doing it al Tanai, that maybe you should count earlier, without a bracha, then later, remember to count once it's clearly nightfall, count again with the bracha, different ideas of what to do. But the question is, how much time after Shkia, after sunset, should one be counting Sefiras Haomer? Now, the understanding of it would be, you're counting Sefiras Haomer when it's nighttime, right? Jewish day begins by night. So you're declaring Hayom, Arba Asar Yom. Today's the 14th day. When are you declaring that? When it's clearly the next day. When is it clearly the next day? How much time after Shkia? So one could count, we'll see, Ben Hashmashos. But the Mechaber writes, this is on your sheets, it's in Tov Pei Tes Sif Beis, Hamadachtakim Ena Sofrim Ad Seisa Kol Chavim. People who are extra stringent, extra careful, they'll only count after the stars come out. Seisa Kol Chavim. V'chein Roi Lasos. I'll read the Mishnah Berurah there. Ratza Lomar. The Minadin Ayav Shalakal Asaper Mitchetech Shal. Akodem Seisa Kol Chavim. Really, in the Ikar Adin, you could count as soon as it starts to get dark, even before what we call the time of Tseis, where the stars come out. Why? The Ben Hashmashos who's Suffolk Laila, because once it starts twilight, okay, you're already within the circle of nighttime. It's already Suffolk Laila. Vazlin l'kula b'Suffolk d'Rabbanan. Normally, we're lenient on our times if all we're dealing with is a rabbinic din. Why? Because Bisvira is manazeh shumin Rabbanan Rav Poskim. Chavetz Chaim writes, according to most poskim, Sefiras Haomer is viewed today, we're not bringing an actual carbon. We're doing something in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, they were counting from the time they brought this carbon. They don't have a Beis HaMikdash, so we bring a carbon. So according to most Shitas, the nature of the mitzvah dips from a Deraisa to a Derabanan. So it's only a Derabanan. One shouldn't put himself in a case of suffix l'chachila. And therefore, if you want to be careful, the best time to do it is when it's Vadei Laila. So the Chavetz Chaim is explaining over here, even though it's a D'Rabbanan, there is room for one to count later. He writes, "V'chein roi lasos, rotzalam l'chachila, mekol makom b'di'evin birch ben hashmatzos yatza." You make the bracha once it's ben hashmatzos yotze. Okay. So in the Mechaber Mishnah Berurah, you already see there is an issue what time to do it. Could you do it ben hashmatzos me'ikar din? Chavetz Chaim says absolutely yes. The Mechaber, the author, the Shulchan Aruch, chose his words carefully. Those who are extra careful. You're extra careful, you want to wait till it's clearly night. Okay, so how much time does that mean? Now, so can you count at your, Mincha Ma'ariv Shkia minyan? Yes. Okay. Count later. When's the better time later to count? So I've seen different numbers. I saw Shmuel Kamenetsky says really the best time to count should be no earlier than 38 minutes after Shkia. Talk about the 40s, numbers in the 50s.
72.
Huh?
Any higher
Comes
than
the
72?
Lakewood Yeshiva, Comes Reb Aaron Kotler, and look at the next line. This is from that Kuntras Nog B'Chachma. Makpidim shelo saper Sefiras Haomer lifnei zman 72 regalim achar shkia. They were makpid in Lakewood not to count Sefira till after 72 minutes.
Rabbi, so I assume they hold the same thing for Kriya Shema.
Fantastic point. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Right? In Lakewood, till today, you will not find them counting Sefiras Haomer before 72 minutes post Shkia. That is the minimum time that you will find them counting. I grew up in a shul. I was lucky. The Rav of my shul, Aaron Zuckerman, Shlita, Baruch Yamim, he was somebody who was a Talmud of Reb Aaron, actually the last couple of years of Reb Aaron's life. And I remember in my shul, usually the common practice is the Rav of a shul goes and counts Sefira. It's very common in many shuls. It's not the person davening Ma'ariv, but rather it's the Rav. He's the one that has to keep track, the special halachos of a Rav. Okay? But usually the Rav is the one who counts the Sefira. In my shul growing up, Kimat the Rav never counted Sefira. Why is this? Because the Rav was the Talmud of Aaron Kotler. He was makbid of 72 minutes. He wasn't going to make the shul. He wanted to have people down by him. He was make the shul wait 72 minutes post Shkia to count Sefira. So the Rav never counted. That's what went down. This was Reb Aaron Kotler's psak. 72 minutes post Shkia. Now, the question someone begs is why? And I'll get even further. In Lakewood, they're not counting Sefiras Haomer 72 minutes. In fact, I found the footnote that was even worse than that. It was much later than 72 minutes. Basically, Reb Aaron Kotler would go out of, let's say, learning in the Beis Medrash. He would go out to the bathroom a minute before they're going to daven Ma'ariv, or whatever, and usually would stay out for 5 minutes. They calculated many, many times, and they didn't end up counting Sefira in Lakewood. It's probably past 80 minutes. Counted 84 minutes.
Wow.
Now, I don't think he was rounding up to 84, but it shows just how careful he was. 72, 72, 72. If there ever was a time, we'll see in a second how that could play out, where it was questionable for 72, they also would flip the Aleinu and the Sefira. Normally, the way we do it is we first count Sefiras Haomer, and then we say the tefillah to end davening of Aleinu. If you want to give yourself a couple extra minutes, especially it's Aleinu plus a Kaddish, so they would first say Aleinu, then Kaddish, and then Sefira to make sure they're past that borderline. It's definitely past 72 minutes.
After Yigdal.
Yeah. They didn't say that in Lakewood. Huh? No, they wouldn't say that. So in Lakewood, they were very makbid, and they are very makbid, not to count before 72 minutes. Now, let me explain a little the background. Let's read it a little further. Lufikach, B'leilei Shabbos v'Yontif, on the nights of Shabbos v'Yontif, on a regular weeknight. Okay, in the yeshiva here we have Ma'ariv Minyanim at 10 o'clock, at 10:30. You're easily getting, if you're davening that late at night, based on the shkil over here is basically 7:50 it was last night. So you have no problem if you're davening 10 o'clock at night, you're post 72 minutes, post Rebbeinu Tam. You're davening 10:30 for sure. So Lakewood Yeshiva on the I don't know what time they do Ma'ariv on a regular night, but I'm sure it's 10, 10:30 for Chulu. So they're covered. The only real issue is a Friday night, it's a Shabbos, when there may not be a regular, they'll daven an earlier Ma'ariv. So those nights, the yeshiva was still makbid to do 72. For the record, here in yeshiva here does not make early Shabbos on a normal week. The yeshiva davens bismano, and they'll wait, right? They will wait to count Sefira. The Yeshiva doesn't wait for 72 minutes, but they wait, count, at whatever time they're comfortable counting. Now, in Lakewood, this is what they did. Below Shabbos Yontif, 50 minutes acher shkia. Normally on Shabbos and Yontif, they were daven Ma'ariv 50 minutes post shkia. B'meya Sefira, mispalim 55 regayim acher shvir. They would push it off another 5 minutes, and I mentioned with Aaron leaving and coming back, it ended up being even later than that. Kedela, the Vadai Shaligiel, the Sefiras Haomer of Nei 72. So they were daven Ma'ariv 55 minutes after Shkia, 58 minutes after Shkia. This way, for sure, by the time of the end of davening, you have the Sefiras Haomer, it's post 72. Comes along, Mr. Etzkowitz, our Chashav Agas Meretz Yisrael, Tzeitzchem Shalom, and he asks a great question. Rabbi, what about Kriya Shema? There's no question about it. Kriya Shema is a mitzvah aseh midoraisa. It's a Torah commandment. Usually Torah commandments were strict. If they were davening Ma'ariv, even the later time, 55 minutes post Shkia, if that's when they start Ma'ariv, what time are they going to be up to Kriya Shema? Even if they daven slowly, 57 and a half minutes. That's before your 72. If you hold 72 to be a golden number, why are you waiting for Sefiras Haomer and not for Kriya Shema?
You can repeat Kriya Shema. You can't repeat Sefira.
Interesting move. Right? Interesting move. Right? So Josh, you want to say, oh, look, Sefiras Haomer, you're going to count it, especially with a bracha. It's okay that they tried to do.
This Kriya Shema is connected to the Shemona Esrei.
Shema, you can always repeat.
It's not standing on its own. It's connected to the Shemona Esrei.
Yeah. Huh?
If you walk into Ma'ariv late and they're starting Shemona Esrei, you skip
Correct.
over everything and go straight to Shemona Esrei. It's not really connected.
But Lamaisa, to me, it does sound a little strange. I like the kasha. Why should it be that there was so makbid about Sefiras Haomer? Pashtus, you see how the Chafetz Chaim writes it. According to most poskim, Sefiras Haomer is a d'Rabbanan. Elamai, if you see the Bir Alach on the top of the page, he does bring Das Rambam V'Achinach Shehu Noeg Min HaTorah Gamata. The Chafetz Chaim brings in the Bir Alacha that the opinion of the Rambam, the opinion of the Sefer HaChinuch, is that Sefiras Haomer today is a Torah commandment. He brings others who talk about this topic, so fine. So even if you're going to tell me he was machmer on Sefiras Haomer because it's a deraisa, and that's why he wanted 72 minutes for that, okay, but he doesn't do that for Kriya Shema. So it's a good question. I haven't had a clear answer to this. This is probably a reason why many people do not follow this. I checked. It's not Lashon Hara. It's Nicker Lakol, right? In our local Lakewood Kollel, it could be called a Lakewood Kollel, but it doesn't mean they follow all the things that is done in Lakewood. And there will be davening Ma'ariv, and there will be counting Sefira before 72 minutes. Okay? Alan caught them. Right? But Aaron Cutler himself held that very strongly. Growing up, I can testify my Rav personally held that strongly. To be makbid in 72 minutes. And we're bringing up, okay, the understanding of the reason of it. It's not so simple to hear. Why would it be so makbid? Pashtus, the Chafetz Chaim's coming out. It's not really a deraisa. Even if you tell me it's a deraisa, you're waiting for that more than you're waiting for Kriya Shema. So I'm not sure fully the reason, but that's a fascinating little flavor of Sefiras Haomer in Lakewood. But I have more. Yes.
So outside of yeshivas, the shuls daven mincha and Ma'ariv together. If you have to wait for 72 minutes for
So again, shuls do what's convenient. And it's convenient to gather people together once. So that's why shuls end up having mincha, Ma'ariv, and Yonah. Because it's hard to get people to come out twice. But in general in life, if you're running out every night, to the gym, if you're running out here, you know what? Yeah, Baruch Hashem, in this community alone, right? There are multiple later minyanim every night for Ma'ariv. You know, we don't yet have what you call a minyan factory, which I think is a Milo. You know, where they have every 50 minutes, every half hour, they can have minyanim. You have places like that. But within the community, things are pretty well structured. Is besides the mincha Ma'ariv minyanim, in the wintertime, there's a 7:45 minyan in the kollel. There's an 8:45 minyan in the kollel. There are 10 o'clock minyanim. The yeshiva has one. I think Shari has one. There's 10 here. The yeshiva has a late 10:30 minyan every night. So there are later minyanim that one could daven at, and that would be better on a nightly basis for Kriya Shema. Would be better. Again, you know, if it's hard to get out, it's definitely understood why people come out once for Mincha Ma'ariv. If you're going out anyway, I'm not telling you to come straight from the gym to the Ma'ariv, but you know, there are milos, you know, you can also learn in between. So it's always there are nice milos in davening later. Now everyone wants another question, Bill Omer, Lil Omer. Okay, I have to deal with it. So I didn't put it on your sheets, but I have it here. Interesting idea. They say that Reb Aaron himself would first count Hayom Yom Echad Be'omer, and afterwards he would say Le'omer. That's what they bring down b'shem the family, and they say that Rav Malkiel, the grandson, currently does the reverse. He does Le'omer first and then Be'omer. Okay, I don't know, you know, who has the recorder up there by him.
Do they do it one right after the other, or do they do one when they make the bracha and then the other later on? Like
no,
after they finish?
No, I think right after. There's you make a bracha. So there's two girsas. Mishnah Berurah brings down there's two girsas, Be'omer and Le'omer. So in Lakewood, it seems the minhag of Aaron Cutler personally was to say both. It's just a question between him and his grandson, at least the way they're reporting it, whether you say Biv first or Liv first. I found in the footnotes here that they bring that in terms of the Shliach Tzibur, first of all, I never heard of a place, and it would be weird for the Shliach Tzibur to say both. Whoever's counting it to say both out loud. You want to be Yotzei, the other opinion, okay, you know, say lower. Somebody also asked me, do you have to repeat the whole phrase, or can you just say, I said, see what you do by Parsha Zachar. You repeat the whole phrase, or just, you know. But I did find that it seems in the Lakewood Yeshiva itself, they weren't makbid about it. And they let the Shliach Tzibur say whichever way you wanted, Be'omer, Le'omer. I remember in back in the day in Yeshiva, I don't know who this is. I don't know if this is really original, you know, this is sanctioned by the Yeshiva or not. But I davened by the Shliach Tzibur a few times in the, you know, Yeshiva Siddur, a nice, you know, Chazan Siddur. And somebody decided to mark off, you know, Masha Varach or Marid. So I think the art school common Girsa is Geshem, and they put Goshem, you know, they crossed it out in the pen, and in the Yeshiva says Goshem. I don't think it was any of the Rosh Yeshivas who did it. I don't know. So in Lakewood, the Shliach Tzibur Siddur did not say Be'omer, Le'omer, on the line, at least in the days of Aaron. That Siddur, you can do whatever you want. It's a free for all. It didn't really matter much. Okay? But personally, it seems that they both tried to get both of them in. I'll tell you a very interesting psak, which I'm not sure this you qualify as a psak of the Lakewood Yeshiva as a whole, but it's definitely something that Rabbi Aaron held of. Interesting story. Once an older person who was very makbid about Sefiras Haomer his entire life came to his Rav. The story was told by Rav Pinchas Bodner, who was a Talmud of Lakewood years ago. He wrote some, I think, the Brachos book, Muksa book, Chashav Talmud Chacham in English. Anyway, so it must have been Maspal, someone he knew, an older person, said, you know, I've counted my entire life Sefiras Haomer, and I forgot one day this year to count. I can't make a bracha. The guy was so hurt, like, I can't make a bracha anymore. I missed one full day. I didn't remember the next day. We know the halacha, if one skips one day, if I forgot to count one day, or or even if they counted the wrong day, sometimes you can have that, you count the wrong day. If you did not count the correct day for an entire day, you didn't remember, if you remember the next morning, that's okay, as long as you say it. But he forgot the entire day, only remembered later. And, okay, the halacha is, you're supposed to continue counting. Just, we would say, now the bracha, safek brachas l'akol, you shouldn't make a new bracha, another bracha, but you should continue counting. 100%, you didn't lose it out. But this person was hurt that he can't make a bracha. So they brought the shayla to Rabbi Aaron Kotler. Rabbi Aaron Kotler came with a fascinating chap. There's a tshuva from the Beis HaLevi who discusses, we count the days and the weeks. Are those one mitzvah or two mitzvah? The Beis HaLevi actually has an interesting discussion. We know, let's say on our tefillin, we make two brachas. On the tefillin shel yad, tefillin shel rosh, make two brachas. Also Ashkenazim there, right? You make two brachas. So you could have two brachas on a mitzvah. So too, Beis HaLevi discusses, should we be making two brachos once I get to day 7? I have a week. So do I count on the days and the weeks? So that itself is an interesting discussion. But he comes out with a very interesting psak. Let's say someone messed up and missed one of the days. Okay? So you can't make a bracha. So we say safek brachos, you shouldn't make a bracha the rest of Sefira. But you could make the bracha on each night that turns into the next week. That means on day 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, and 49. Each of those days, since it's now becoming a new week, you're counting the weeks, you could make a bracha for the weeks. So that gave so much chizuk to this man. He missed, Sefiras Haomer. Oh, I could do this. So Rabbi Aaron Paskin, they could go like this Beis HaLevi. Chavetz Chaim does not bring this Beis HaLevi anywhere in the Mishnah. But Rabbi Aaron Kotler Paskin, you could go like this Beis HaLevi. I saw Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, Talmud Rabbi Aaron, he was not referencing directly this story, but he says, nobody really brings this Beis HaLevi l'halacha, but being the fact anyway, there are multiple sveikos and there are tzadim. If it's one long mitzvah, you really could make a bracha. So he says, based on those added halachic tzadim, halachic reasonings, you potentially could use it in a situation to do that.
Would you say the reverse? If you miss a week, you continue saying every day?
Interesting question. If the time, what you're really saying is, what's your case? Is the case where the person counted the correct days, just messed up on the weeks?
Counted the 7th? Oh, that's a good question.
Right?
That's a good question.
So that's different. If the Mishnah does talk about those cases. What happens where you make a mistake in the days?
He got the wrong day,
right?
He said the 6th day and it was the 7th day. Let's say that.
So he missed everything. So that's really like our case. It ends up being the same thing as our case. So you could do 7:14 and B'chulu. So that was one I thought very interesting psak from Rabbi Aaron Kotler. Now let's go back to yesterday. Does one say Avarachamim by Shabbos Mavarchim or Chodesh Iyar? Does one say Avarachamim? So what happened to the shuls? Anyone remember?
You said it.
Huh?
You said it.
Said it. What happened to Yeshiva? We said it. What happens in Lakewood?
They didn't say it.
They don't say it.
I knew it.
Now, really, I should make the story. If you answer that they do say it in Lakewood, I'll give you full credit. Why? This is a story. Think about this. Have you seen a lot of yeshiva bachrim around? The answer is yes. Why? Because for most yeshivas, it's still ben azmanim. Yeshiva didn't restart yet. Usually, a lot of yeshivas give off until Rosh Chodesh Iyar. That's why you still see them around. Okay, some yeshivas, Baruch Hashem, start up right away, right? But others, they give a little more vacation. Fine. Anyway, so
9 days instead.
think about this. In Rabbi Aaron's time, I wonder, what exactly the minyan in Lakewood looked like on Shabbos B'Varchim or Chodesh Iyar. Who was around Lakewood then? I'll tell you one thing, Rabbi Aaron Kohler wasn't there. Rabbi Aaron Kohler actually lived in Borough Park. He commuted to Lakewood, which really made it. He was only in the yeshiva for a few days a week. He was basically there on the weekends. During the week, he lived in Borough Park. He was running the Jewish World. And, he's dealing with older guys in the yeshiva. So they were able to handle it, most of the week. They didn't have the Rosh Yeshiva there. So Rabbi Aaron lived in Borough Park. So what really is the Minhag Yeshiva in Rabbi Aaron's time? It wasn't clear. He didn't know. Rabbi Aaron's nifter. Rabbi Shneir is alive. Okay. What did they do? In Shneir's time, they said Avarachim. Shabbos B'Varchim Rosh Chodesh Iyar. So for years, seemingly, the Lakewood Yeshiva was saying Avarachim, right? But then, by Shneir time, the yeshiva grew more and more, and there always was a nice olam there. Shneir, sure, was living in Lakewood and was there for Shabbos B'Varchim Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and they said Avarachim. After Shneir was nifter, somebody told them he was with Rabbi Aaron in Borough Park, right? They say the Maisa, it was in the house of Yitzchak Schneingarten. They were by Rabbi Aaron, and Rabbi Aaron instructed the Chazan not to say Avarachim. So what did they do? The yeshiva for years and years was under the assumption. We say Avarachim. They find out years later that Rabbi Aaron Kohler personally told the Chazan, you shouldn't. Now this is like generational. They've been saying it under Rav Shneir Kotler for years. Rav Shneir was nifter, and they find out that no, the Zayda seemingly held that you should not say Avarachim. I'll get to the moment why. What did the yeshiva do? The yeshiva stopped saying Avarachim on Shabbos B'Varchim Rosh Chodesh Iyar. They changed their minhag. Why they changed their minhag? So it's reported here. I saw B'Shem. Forsheim was one of the poskim of Lakewood. I'm sure he was involved in this psak. Is that they understood that Rav Shneir Kotler, he was doing different than his father. He was doing different than his father because he didn't know. Didn't know what his father held. But it was something Rav Shneir was the type of person, he wouldn't argue with his father. If his father said one way, even if he himself thought differently, he would back down and go like his father. So they changed the minhag of the yeshiva to what they do ad hayom, or more specifically ad yesterday, right? Not to say Avarachim on Shabbos B'Varchim Rosh Chodesh Iyar, because they found out from somebody, historical records, that Rabbi Aaron Kotler held not to say it. Now that itself, I think, is an amazing, interesting perspective of minhagim and how things could evolve over time. And it's also, it shows the importance of the Gabayim and the people who notice things to keep a record. You never know. We're doing something, quote unquote, wrong. Lakewood Yeshiva had no problem. They had the guts to go retract and say, you know what? We're going to retract. We're going to go back to the way it was.
Last year, the shir dealt with when people get married in couples time. Is there a possibility?
We're going to talk about this.
That this was a Maisa with a chassan or some other kind of situation.
Oh,
where that's why they didn't say.
So I'm going to get to that in a second.
This was a Maisa, and not the way Rav Aaron
Fantastic
held
point.
Wow.
Fantastic point. But so again, the Lakewood Yeshiva today does not recite Avarachim and Shabbos B'Varchim, and the logic, actually something like Ed said before, because you know what? Do we say Tachlim these days? No, it's Chodesh Nisan. So we view it as Chodesh Nisan, and therefore, just like we don't say Tachlim, we don't say Avarachim. Now but it's also Yemei Sefira, tragic days. during these tragic days. So here's a very interesting idea. The Lakewood Yeshiva held as a shita. When is the main Sefiras Haomer? Answer is what we call the second half of Sefira, which means within the discussion of Sefiras Haomer, we're going to get to that point you brought up, we'll call it the simple two ways to count. There's really nuances, but do you start right away from Pesach is finished, you're counting 33 days up until Lag BaOmer, and Lag BaOmer is finished, you're done. You're finished with your mourning. Or do we count the 33 days from Rosh Chodesh Iyar? You find people, everything's fine. They're not in Avelis yet. It's only post Rosh Chodesh until Shavuos. So the Lakewood Yeshiva held that it's a second Sefira. That being so, they said Avarachamim is based on when you keep Sefiras Haomer. So since the yeshiva is keeping Sefiras Haomer the second way, we're going to not say Avarachamim on Shabbos Mevarchim Rosh Chodesh Iyar. That's interesting. If you ask me, Moshe Feinstein brings down, many people say that really the second Sefira is the Iker Sefira.
Yeah, we're going to say it in the second one.
One second. The second one's the Iker Sefira. But yet, there are those that did recite Avarachamim yesterday.
And we're going to do it again.
And the reason for that, right? Now, debatable, but Mishnah Berurah seems to be mashma that Avarachamim is not a din, whether it's Tali on Sefiras Haomer or not Sefiras Haomer. It's not a din. But okay, I'll leave that out first. I want to get back to that. But the full extent of this, which I have yet to fully research, that was my one question left. It seems in the olden days in Lakewood, they would push in the yeshiva in terms of, say, of shaving, that the Talmidim in the yeshiva should keep the second Sefira. And if a guy wanted to do the first Sefira and up until Lag BaOmer, they would try to stop him. But if anyone knows anything, it's reported in the Sefarim here, that at a certain point, even in earlier days, probably in Schneer's time, the yeshiva got too big. They didn't have so much control. And all types of, the yeshiva became Rosh Hashanah, all types of people, all types of minhagim. And, there wasn't really any more minhag yeshiva in terms of this. So a guy wanted to keep second Sefira and no one's jumping in and hey, why are you shaving? Or first Sefira. And no one's asking him after Lag BaOmer, why are you shaving? But I'll tell you a very interesting nafkamina, which I brought up. Would the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood be Mesader Kedushin on a wedding that takes place after Lag BaOmer? It's really a new phenomenon. Until very recently, within the last, I would say 5, most 10 years, there always were weddings in Sefiras Haomer before Rosh Chodesh. There always was. And there were weddings on Lag BaOmer. But from Rosh Chodesh to Lag BaOmer, no one has weddings. That's easy, because that's no man's land according to anyone. But post Lag BaOmer till Shavuos, it used to be in the yeshiva circles, there were no weddings, period. Nowadays, because Baruch Hashem, the Jewish community is bigger, and there's not so easy to find wedding halls, there are more and more weddings popping up in the second days of Sefira. Check my calendar. I think I'm going to one.
I have trouble booking the halls.
Yes. Now the question is, would a Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood be Mesader Kedushin if they really hold the second Sefira as the main Sefira? Would they be Mesader Kedushin at a wedding which is taking place during the second Sefira? Anyone here knows the answer to this question, or anyone in our audience, please send in. I hope to do more research, find out next time. But I think our journey today really accomplishes two things. Number one, hope through today's share, everyone got a nice perspective, a nice chazara, first and foremost, of some of the halachos regarding Sefiras Haomer, both in terms of the counting of the Sefira, as well as the practices of the the Avelos. But secondly, to get a little flavor for, minhagim within a yeshiva. A yeshiva, is it open ben hazman, not open ben hazman? What's going on in yeshiva? What do we do? I remember a Pagan said by Rabbi Sharfman's Levaya. He said, Rabbi Sharfman's not here. Who's going to remember if we say Kal Keli on Shabbat? If we say, what's it called? Adir Adirenu on Shabbos Chol HaMoed, will we say it or not? Like these little nuances. What is the minhag? These are things you need. You need guardians to watch on to these and hold the things. I'll just end with one nice point. As a good Magid share, before I do a share, I do a lot of research. Nowadays, research involves Svarim, and it involves this thing called, the internet. So I Googled what comes up when it says Aaron Cutler and Sefiras Haomer. So now, hopefully, it'll come up a halakhic share on it. But till then, I found multiple listings. It was the same share, but it was not about halacha. It was about a ganata, but a nice idea. Aaron Cutler talked about in yeshiva the following idea, which is a well-known concept, is if you look at the Mishnah in Avos, in the 6th parak, it talks about, to be Kona Torah, there are 48 midos, 48 ways a person connects himself, literally acquires Torah. 48 ways to acquire Torah. So Aaron Cutler put that together with Sefiras Haomer. He says, and it's actually a cute thing. I've gotten past Lakewood has a Sefiras Haomer calendar. So they actually have 2 counts. They have the day of the Omer, and they do have, it's really based on the Sefer HaChinuch. They would count on the bottom how many days to Kabbalah Satorah. Right? So they would have really 2 numbers. No one's saying you have to count the second number with the bracha, and if you miss it, but they on the yeshiva calendar, it'd be cute. The 14th day, so do your math. How many days to Kabbalah Satorah? 35, right? So it would have both numbers there. And Aaron Cutler would say, for counting towards Kabbalah Satorah, it really is nice to utilize, you go through the mission of Avos, each day, do a different midah, a different acquisition of Torah. That'll count for 48 days. And day 49, you could do a review. But that was Aaron Cutler's nice idea. Each day, different nice little midos. You never realize, all different factors that go involved for a person to be successful in learning, to connect with Torah. There's so many attributes that the more a person tries to become a better person, the more easily it is for Torah to attach itself to us. And we should all be zocha to take these days of Sefiras Haomer, as Rabbi Aaron put it, as days towards Kabbalah Satorah, and to gain each day, become a little bit better, so Torah can become more part of my life. Thank you very much. Wishing everyone a wonderful week.